The feeling I had was similar to being in a train ride, trying to enjoy it. You feel like the wind in your hair, the sun on your face. It's nice. But then you see that in front of the train, on the train track, there's a bridge and the bridge is broken. As a patient, as a carrier, there were a lot of gaps in what was available, both in terms of understanding what is out there, of finding interventions, just having some kind of support. So I decided to put my weight here with the overall mission to help each individual understand which interventions should make up their entire protocol. I genuinely think that it's the best thing that happened to me to know that I carry it. So of course, carrying it is one of the worst challenges I had in my life. The fact of knowing it and then being able to change my lifestyle, what I want to emphasize on is your genes are not your destiny. You can change a lot, and it's been proven over and over again over a longer period of time. Scientists have run longitudinal studies, so they look at populations over a longer period of time, and they can definitely see that you have individuals who carry E4 who don't develop Alzheimer's.
One of the things I love about Phoenix Community is you're sharing some very specialized clinical trial level data and insights with this community so that they're really at the cutting edge of what's happening. Welcome to Think Shift, the podcast that invites you to change your perspective by exploring the incredible power of the human brain and mind. I'm your host, Mantazh Khanna, and I am a brain coach, a neuroscience researcher, and an advocate for holistic health and well-being. My own journey into this work began as a cancer survivor and a caregiver to a family member with Parkinson's. So I've seen firsthand just how profoundly our mind influences our body. And that's why I do what I do. Today, I work with individuals and organizations to build mental resilience, optimize brain health, and to support our healing using science-backed techniques. And as I pursue my own PhD in neuroscience and mind-body medicine, I bring the latest thinking to every conversation. In each episode of Think Shift, I sit down with leading experts to explore how neuroscience, cutting-edge technology, and even everyday practical tools can help us think better, live smarter, and thrive deeper. Every expert that is invited to this show is going to share real-world insights and actionable strategies that you and I can use every day. And my hope is that this isn't just a podcast, but an invitation to you to reimagine what's possible for your mind and body. So, if you're ready for some bold insights, some transformative science, and a few surprise aha moments along the way, you are in the right place. Let's start shifting. My guest today is Dr. Kevin Tran, a doctor of pharmacy and the founder of the Phoenix Community, a global platform that's designed to help people beat the odds of Alzheimer's. I'm particularly excited about this conversation because Dr. Tran's journey is deeply personal. Through advanced genetic testing, he discovered that he himself carries a rare genetic combination, one that confirmed that he is at a high risk for Alzheimer's, or in his own words, a ticking time bomb in his head. But instead of feeling helpless, he's turned that knowledge into a mission. That mission became the Phoenix Community, a community unlike most Alzheimer's forums or support groups I have seen. What makes it different is that it is laser focused on prevention over fear. It brings together individuals from around the world who aren't waiting for symptoms. They're choosing to act early, leveraging the latest science and lifestyle medicine to rewrite their brain's future. As a brain coach myself, what I love about the Phoenix Community is that it not only offers cutting-edge science and research updates that are tailored to your genetics, but also structured experimentation to help you discover what nutrition, what lifestyle, what supplement strategies truly work for you. And then There are accountability partners to help you drive that real habit change along the way, which we all know is really difficult. So, in this episode, we'll explore what it really means to carry this gene, how genetic testing can be a gateway to empowerment, and what cutting-edge science says about preventing neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's. Dr. Tran walks us through the strategies that he himself and his community are using to optimize cognitive function and extend their health span. So whether you're at a risk for Alzheimer's or not, or you're genetically tested or not, this conversation will make you reflect on how much control we actually have over our future and why more of us should be thinking ahead when it comes to our brains. With that, I'll welcome Dr. Tran. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
Welcome
you for
to
having
ThinkShift.
me. Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Very excited to have you, and I've heard your journey, and we will definitely go into it. But I think at the onset, I'd love to start with the very question at the beginning of Alzheimer's, which is, we all know what it is, it's memory loss, but I think there's more to it. And also, what is its connection to genetic testing and to genes? Can you help take us through that a little bit?
So what you see in Alzheimer's, in like pop culture and everywhere, is just loss of memory, but it goes way deeper than that. And first of all, it's not something that happens at one point in time. It starts like early on, it's like memory lapses, and then they become worse and worse. And it goes on to change in personality, anger issues, these type of other symptoms that happen. So it's not like in the movies, like in The Notebook or whatever,
Sure.
like where you only lose your memory. It goes deeper than that. Regarding genetic risk now, you have basically two types of Alzheimer. You have the early onset that is extremely rare, and that happens at around 30 or 40 years old. That is very, very rare. And then you have the more classic Alzheimer, which is happening around like 60, 65 and onwards. So that's the late onset of Alzheimer's. So I think for this episode, we'll focus on the late onset of Alzheimer's.
Sure.
And the main genetic risk for late onset of Alzheimer's is a gene called APOE4. So APOE is short for apolipoprotein E. And you have three different versions of this gene, so three different alleles.
Yeah.
You have the E2, E3, and E4. So if we summarize it, E2 is protective. You would see a lot of centenarians, so people who live more than 100 years old, carrying this E2 in a disproportionate amount. It's very rare, but it's very present in centenarians. You have E3, which is the main population, so around, let's say, 75% of the population, they carry E3. And then E4 is around 25% of the population. So the first reaction usually is that 25 is actually not a small number.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
That highly depends also on your environment and your genetics, like your ancestry. You'll see that with Caucasians, it's a lower prevalence than with Asians, for example.
So it sounds like it's not just about having the APOE gene, it's also the type of gene, and it can be both good and bad, right? You also mentioned people who live over 100 years old, they have more of APOE2, and it actually protects memory degradation or, Alzheimer's from happening.
Cognition, yeah.
I guess the natural question is, what happens? Like, well, how do you do this type of testing to find out whether you have APOE 2, 3, or 4?
Let me take a few steps back, I think, to define why it's a problem to carry APOE4.
Yeah.
If we go back to the gene, right? So everyone carries two copies of the gene, one from each parent. This gene is actually coding for a protein called APOE as well. So the gene and the protein it codes for is the exact same name.
Same name.
When you have APOE2, you code for APOE2, the protein, and same thing for APOE3 and APOE4. This protein is involved in lipid transports, in helping your neurons repair when they suffer damage, and to clear your beta amyloid, which is proteins in your brain that creates inflammation and that leads to cognitive decline over time. So because of the fact that APOE, the protein, is inside your entire body, and it has such a whole systemic function, meaning it has functions across the entire body. You don't only get Alzheimer's risk, you get cardiovascular risk and so on. It's more like we focus a lot on Alzheimer's because it's the big one, but it has a lot of upstream and downstream consequences.
Right.
Now, on your question about how you test for it, so any genetic testing nowadays are able to detect it. It's one of the main genes that they screen for. Now, depending on which country you are residing in, it might be possible or not to do it consumer basis, like without a prescription. For example, I'm coming from France, and I think it's still not allowed today to do consumer testing on these type of genes because the French government decides that you have to get the answer from a doctor because you're not able to interpret the result yourself. And it's true that it gets very difficult to see the result on a screen and then you decide by yourself what you have to do and you're alone
You're
there.
interpreting it yourself.
Yeah.
Does it also have insurance implications? So if I get the genetic testing done and let's say I'm positive.
Yeah, so it's a tricky one. Again, it depends on the geographies. Right now, the answer is no, up to my knowledge. So the one country where it's the most difficult, I think it's the US, because the laws to protect individuals are a little bit weaker there, especially for long-term care. So I'm not super familiar about the different type of insurance, but you have one type of insurance where you get like a flat payment if you are diagnosed with a certain disease for long-term care, and these might have consequences there, like they might not reimburse you or give you that flat payment.
Right.
But typically, a lot of drugs that are brought to the market require you to actually do the test because you would qualify depending on your genotype. So if you carry E4, you usually would get access to specific drugs.
I'd love to shift gears to your own personal journey on this. You have done this genetic testing yourself. So tell us what prompted you to do it. How did you react to it? And then, of course, how Phoenix Community came about out of that.
So I have been on a longevity journey for maybe in the past 3-4 years when I decided that working the corporate life, like 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. was very difficult. And I was trying to see what I wanted to focus on in my life. It became very clear to focus on health, longevity being one of the most important things. And longevity being health span and lifespan. So both the duration of life and the quality of life.
Yes.
So if you focus a bit on longevity, you will see that you have 4 main causes of death other than an accident. So those 4 are atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, but very easy to fix relatively. You just fix your diet and you exercise. Then you have all the metabolic diseases like diabetes and so on. Again, very easy to fix. Diet, sports, again, relatively easy.
Yes, relatively easily. I wouldn't say very easy, but relatively
compared
easy.
to the rest is much easier.
Sure.
The third one is cancer.
Yeah.
So I know this is like personal for you as well. I lost my mother due to cancer. I don't want to say it's easy to fix, but I want to say that if you detect it early, your chances are very, very high because you have a lot of treatment that are available. It's as long as you screen it properly, you can fix it.
Right.
So more or less solved as well. The last one is dementia, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's. And here is a field where we don't understand the mechanism of the disease, so it's very difficult. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'll fix those 3. Then this one, I'll just see if I'm a high risk or not. So I wanted to screen specifically for that gene. I did the gene testing, and then, it was a surprise because my family doesn't have any Alzheimer's history, mainly because my grandparents, they died in the war in Cambodia, so in the 70s. It was a big massacre. It was a genocide of 25% of the population or something.
Right.
So I don't have any history, so I didn't know. And it came as a big, big surprise because as a East Asian, the prevalence is even lower than that 1%. So it's extremely rare. So it was a huge surprise. Then it changed my entire life because it's very difficult to focus on building a company, building wealth, having impact when you have this like Damocles sword hanging over your head and you don't know when it's going to hit you. It also doesn't make sense to make like money or build impact if you lose your mind at 65.
Yeah.
Because one of the main factors is like stress. We'll cover that later, but like building a company, having a startup, that's super high stress, and then it decreases my lifespan, my health span, and so on. So I decided to go on like a 2 months of trying to chill and live in Bali, in Phuket, enjoy the island life.
Right.
And then realized it wasn't for me because the feeling I had was similar to being in a train ride, trying to enjoy it. You feel like the wind in your hair, the sun on your face. It's nice. But then you see that in front of the train, on the train track, there's a bridge and the bridge is broken and the train is going like very, very fast towards that bridge. So it's very difficult to enjoy life that way. And I went to see therapists, I went to see other friends with other type of diseases, but that could understand it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are two type of people out there. You have the people who manage to really put that in a box, forget about it, and then hope that someone will solve it for them.
Right.
If it doesn't happen, then it's okay. They enjoyed their lives, and that's great. And then miraculously, if someone solves it, then it's also great. Then you have that other type of people like me, really can't stand still, and I don't want to leave my fate to someone else. So it's about having agency over one's life, and that was one main driver in my life. So decided to take action on that. Now, how can I help? Like going into research was not really an option because there are way more smarter people than me, like working on that for like decades and decades. So I don't think I could change anything. But I felt like as a patient, as a carrier, there were a lot of gaps in what was available, both in terms of understanding what is out there, of finding interventions, and on just having some kind of support. So I decided to put my weight here with the overall mission of, and this is how I built the Phoenix, the overall mission is basically to help each individual understand which interventions should make up their entire protocol and which interventions works for them or not. Because the main key thing in, I want to say healthcare in general, but specifically in APOE4 and Alzheimer's, is there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Like everyone is extremely different. We already mentioned based on like your ancestry, so your genetics. And we have examples where you have people with exactly similar genotype. Let's say Italians from the south of Italy compared to Italians in the US. Same genes, but they have a way higher risk in the US because of the environment. Then you have people sharing the same environment, like in the US, let's say African Americans with Caucasians, same environment, but because of their ancestry and their genes, very different risk as well. So genes, environment, and also your habit and your preferences plays a big role into what protocol you should follow.
But I did want to take a moment and just say thank you to you for sharing that. I know it's a personal story. It cannot be easy to know that something like this might be coming, like you described it, the broken bridge down the track, but also just so much courage and bravery to attack it head on and say, no, I'm going to try and take agency over this and do what I can. I think that's very commendable.
Thank you.
I also wanted to ask, when you did find out, you said it was a very big surprise for you. If there are other people that are tuned into this episode and might be perhaps considering, okay, he did this testing and he did not even have a background of it, and then it was a big surprise for him. Should I do this testing too? And then how would I feel if I find out it's positive? Can you talk to that person and like take them through what it's like when you know it's positive or you know it's negative? Like, why should they do this testing? What's the real benefit of it?
So on the decision to test or not, it's actually something very personal because once you test positive, like your family members have a high risk of having it. So I actually had this discussion or trying to probe if some family members should test or not. I know they're not on LinkedIn, they're not on social media and so on, so they wouldn't know unless I tell them, right? So that's the same type of decision, should they know or not. There are definitely pros and cons, and it really depends on the type of person you are. So again, you have these two types of people, right? The people who can actually put that in a box and forget about it or don't want to take action on it and hoping that someone else will deal for them. Or the type of people would feel empowered. So if you are the first type, definitely don't test. I talked about friends a little bit earlier. The reason why they banned it, 23andMe, is because they deemed it too cruel to tell people about it. Because at that point in time, it was decades ago, they thought that it wasn't possible to do anything about it. Now we can do things about it. But the stress that comes with it creates a lot of damage. And they believe that the negative impact of the stress outweighs the positive impact of whatever interventions you can do, which could be true when you actually don't know what's happening now and the latest science. But definitely knowing it adds an additional anxiety weight there.
Right.
Now, if you're more the second type of people where you feel empowered, I genuinely think that it's the best thing that happened to me to know that I carry it. So of course, like carrying it is one of the worst challenge I had in my life. So really bad. I really would do anything to remove that from my genes. But the fact of knowing it, first of all, I carry it, so I'd rather know it and then being able to change my lifestyle. And it doesn't need to be something like extremely like intense or extreme. You can probably do like the 80-20 rule and focusing on the very easy things to do and already improve dramatically your chances.
Yeah.
But overall, knowing it, and I guess it goes a bit on the stoicism part of knowing that you are not immortal, it pushed me to really like, I'd say focus more on in life in general on what matters more. Forget about the small things that don't matter in the grand scheme of things and have a purpose and live life probably more meaningfully.
Yes, and a lot more aware too of, what drives you, what doesn't, what stresses you, what doesn't. Yeah, I think I can say that safely from my own personal experience through with cancer, that you definitely learn to reprioritize life and what fills it and focus only on those things that give you meaning, as you said. You could be falling into any one of the two categories. There's no right and wrong. And I definitely want the audience to know that, which is why I asked you that question. Is it a simple test? Let's say I choose to do it. It's just a swab. Is it a blood test? What does it look like? And how long does it take to know?
So it's a swab that you do on your cheek, so very painless. You put it in a tube, you do it at home, then you ship it back to the provider.
Okay.
I'd say it's almost a commodity. Gene testing, you just have to know that there are two types of gene testing. You have one that only tests for a few snippets. That's the case of 23andMe and a few others, where they only look at portion of your genome. And then very recently, you have the whole genome sequencing that happens, which screens for your entire genome. So I think it's like billions of bases. The value of screening for your entire genome is currently the knowledge, the overall knowledge is on only 1% of the genes. We haven't studied 99% of them because maybe the impact is very low or so on. But as the science progresses, once you have scanned your entire genome, you will know later on. So even if you don't have information on that 99%, whatever new research comes out, you will be able to get information.
Right.
So I would suggest to do it at least once. It's not expensive at all. So you have a lot of different providers. It's a commodity. Yeah. So it's probably like $350 to do this whole genome sequencing.
Right.
It takes a few weeks to a few months, but that includes like shipping.
Right.
So painless. It's very easy.
And are there any providers that you could share? You said 23andMe. Are there others that you want to...
So 23andMe, they bankrupted, so not possible anymore. So one that we work with is called sequencing.com. They do whole genome sequence, and they are great.
Great. And they send the kit to you at home and you can just do it. Sounds simple, but sounds like the test might be simple. The implications of it might be not so simple. The other question I had for you on this was, does it matter if, let's say, the genetic testing results come back and I have it from one side of my lineage, so let's say my dad's side, but not my mother's side? Does that make a difference to, what the implications of Alzheimer's might be for me? Or is it worse if it's from both? Is it, if it's not there from both, then that's fantastic. But does it make a difference if it's from one versus two parents?
Yeah, definitely. So when you carry these copies, so you're either like an E2, E3, E3, E4. So you have all these combinations possible.
Yeah.
When you carry both, the risk of getting Alzheimer is like 15x on average, more than the general population, which is
15x.
15 times more.
Yeah.
And when you have additional risk factors like just being East Asian, it goes up to 33x. That is the risk of getting Alzheimer's at one point in time in your life. So I think they test it at 85 years old.
Okay.
Which means that when you graph it, like it goes up to 100%, right? And that's asymptote.
Is there a myth that you want to bust about Alzheimer's?
There's actually so many myths. Yeah, you have the part about the damage that Alzheimer's causes. I'd say it's like way more horrible than what people think.
Yeah.
I used to work in the geriatric department of a hospital. And then, you think that your loved ones will be there and you are snapping in and out of it. And sometimes the real you comes out. But the reality of it, like that you see in the hospital is the patients, they start losing their mind. They start screaming. So the moment where the kids or the grandkids come visiting, it's a hard moment. So over time, the kids stop coming because they get scared. The son or daughter of the Alzheimer's patients, they know it's a moment where that makes them sad, so they come less and less, and in the end, people die alone. That's what I've experienced firsthand during like a clinical residency, and it was extremely scary. A lot of people, I'd say, prefer to die than to have Alzheimer's.
Right.
So it's
So that's a myth that you'd love to bust, that it's not as simple as just losing your memory. It's pretty much losing your identity, losing your being in so many ways.
Yeah, so you really want to avoid that. So that's one myth. The second myth is that you can't do anything about it, about your risk. What I want to emphasize on is your genes are not your destiny. You can change a lot, and it's been proven over and over again over a longer period of time. So scientists have run longitudinal studies, so they look at populations over a longer period of time, and they can definitely see that you have individuals who carry E4 who don't develop Alzheimer's. So that exists. So definitely we can do things about it.
Yeah, I love that. Your genes are not necessarily your destiny. You might be programmed for it, but the program doesn't have to be expressed.
Yeah.
So let's go there, okay? Because I'd love to give people more hope. What is the latest science saying? What can we do to be able to prevent this neurodegeneration from happening?
Main issue is that the science doesn't understand Alzheimer's mechanism yet, which means that when you're looking at research, they are looking at amyloid deposit, which is again proteins in your brain that creates inflammation, and inflammation leads to neuronal death. And then amyloid leads to tau protein buildup, which is again creating inflammation and so on. So there is some causality, but the causality is not 100% there. It's not because you have amyloid beta that you'll get Alzheimer, but the majority, if not all Alzheimer's patients have amyloid beta. So they don't know if it's upstream enough to be able to fix it. That's why scientists have been trying to look at different pathways. But the issue with that type of disease is that you have to look for a long period of time. And the model that they use, if it's not human, then it's on mice. And it's not very perfect. But the hope is coming from more anecdotal evidence of individuals that have managed to reverse cognitive decline. And that happened to quite a few different stories. So it's N=1 situations. It's not as robust as a clinical trial, but you realize very fast that not a lot of things are funded by clinical trials. Only medications that are patented or patentable are usually funded by medtech or pharma, because then they can make money of it.
Sure.
No one will really fund an intervention on fixing your diet, maximizing your sleep, and so on.
Yeah.
That's why it's so difficult to gather that data in a robust way. But what we see is that definitely patients that have been diagnosed with MCI, so mild cognitive decline, they manage to reverse it, and they improve their memory based on just doing lifestyle interventions.
Okay, so let's go into that. And before we do, where do you get all of it? Because one of the things I love about Phoenix Community is you're sharing some very specialized clinical trial level data and insights with this community, so that they're really at the cutting edge of what's happening. I know you have a background in medicine, but how do you know where to go to get this information?
So it's actually quite difficult to gather that around the world.
Yeah.
My source of information is usually like those conferences. So you have the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease conference. It happens once a year. You have the International Alzheimer conference. So you have these 2 or 3 conferences that happen where all the scientists come. I believe there's still some gaps in what is represented, especially from Asia, which I find surprising. So from China, the research doesn't seem to be that much out there. And I have trouble believing that they are not researching it, because with aging population, it must happen there as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So my plan now is to do around the world that I'm starting actually in 1 week, where I'm visiting different cities, including in China, in the US, to visit the labs and talk to the researchers and to gather the latest.
Beyond the medication, there's also lifestyle factors that can help us. Can you dive into maybe your top 3 picks in lifestyle factors and tell us the strategies that you use and that you request the community to use, and what has worked, what hasn't worked?
In my methodology to pick those top 3, I would pick the ones that are what I call no regrets, which means they don't come with heavy side effects. Because the worst thing that you can do is do something, have tons of side effects, and it doesn't work, and then you are like worse than before, right? It will sound very cliche, honestly, those answers. But one thing that everyone has to understand is cognitive health is very, very tightly correlated to cardiovascular health. So whatever is good for your heart is good for your brain as well because of vascularization and everything. So the good part is if you do a lot of sports, cardio, zone 2 exercising, and that is the first one is for everyone, the entire population. The
Sure.
second aspect, and that is specific to APOE4, especially because we carry cholesterol in a very inefficient way, is to dramatically reduce your cholesterol, so your saturated fat
Okay.
in your diet, which you can easily test with ApoB and LDL-C in any blood test. So that is a very easy intervention because the endpoint is very easily testable. So one is sports, second is fixing your diet. I'd say the third one is sleep. And I want to add a fourth one, which is like stress.
Sure.
So those top four, they are more or less on equal footing.
Okay. So cardio, especially zone 2 cardio, making sure you're keeping your cholesterol really in check, not even just in check, but actually low levels.
Yes.
And getting that regularly tested.
Yeah.
And then sleep.
Yeah.
And your fourth would be stress.
Yes. And out of those four, the cholesterol part is specific to APOE4. The other three are for the general population.
Can you dive into each one of those a little bit more and give us specific strategies? So let's say if we're talking about sleep, good sleep, bad sleep. I mean, we know we all feel whether it's good or it's bad, but is there anything particular in sleep that is correlated to Alzheimer's that we need to be careful about?
Yeah, so your deep sleep is very important. That's when your brain regenerates and repairs itself and so on. Actually, like the duration of your sleep is important because those three phases, each one of those have a big impact. For the majority of people, measuring it is important. So I wear an Oura ring. You have like smartwatches. I know for some people it adds additional stress and then it's like creating a lot of damage. So that's why I want to say like for the majority of people, you actually have tons of ways to optimize sleep. And I know I said it as number 3, but I actually think it's one of the most important ones because it regulates also your discipline and everything else, your cravings. So I would actually focus a lot on being sure that the sleep environment and your sleep timing is optimal.
Yes.
So if we talk about the different interventions, be able to maximize your sleep, number 1 would be to always go to bed at a regular time. So not swapping between like weekdays and weekends and having like 2-3 hours difference. That's very important. Having a room that is cold, like very cold, no sound, no light. Even like research have shown that even the small red light that you have in electronic apparels, they might disrupt your sleep.
Right.
So high impact as well, having magnesium before sleep.
Yeah.
And having sunlight first thing in the morning. Very, very, very important.
Yes.
To have that. Even 15 minutes sunlight in your eye, extremely important.
And these are the things that would trigger you into a good sleep, a sound sleep. But I think, as you said, the sleep architecture is really important too. So making sure you get those 3-4 cycles that you require and make sure you get the deep sleep, the delta wave patterns into you, which doesn't happen with, lights around you and sounds around you and not the right temperature, the ambient temperature. So those are all the things that I would love for the audience to hear as things that they must do in order to create the right environment for that right sleep architecture. And I think sleep quality, more and more research shows, is taking precedence over sleep quantity. Quantity is important, yes, but I think the quality is equally, if not more important. It's great that you actually monitor that. You don't get obsessed over your sleep data, do you?
I mean, I'm lucky enough to always have 90 plus, so I'm happy. I'm happy about it.
Okay, good. So you're sleeping well. Yeah. So it sounds like, Kevin, you want to put sleep as number 1. What would be your number 2 then if you were to rethink? Still cardio?
Yeah, the gap is not very big. I'd say those 4 are really there.
Yeah.
And it's like a dose effect, right? The cardio can mean if you do a lot or not. So very hard to really prioritize.
Yeah.
But those are such non-regret thing. Like it will maximize your longevity.
Yeah.
Regarding cardio, I want to add that doing HIIT, so high interval intensive training, is also very important, increasing your VO2 max.
Right.
I'm giving this advice because, yes, you want to maximize your cognitive health, but then if your heart fails or if you don't have any muscles and you fall, then your life is not great either.
Right.
So you don't want to have any weak link in your body as a whole when you age.
Yeah.
So overall, regarding sports, a good metric to maximize is VO2 max, which is your body ability to process oxygen. That is a very, very good marker. Doing a bit of strength training, a bit of high intensive interval training, and then doing quite a lot of cardio. And cardio, zone 2, for those who don't know, it's So we say zone 2, it's a heart rate. I can't remember the percentage of your max heart rate, but I think it's around 60 to 75% of your max heart rate. But a very easy way to test it is actually if you manage to have a conversation without being out of breath.
Right.
And you have to maintain that. And people are very surprised how easy it is to reach zone 2.
Yeah.
There's no issue. You don't need to push super hard when you run. Just stay at that level and it will work.
One thing that comes to mind is also supplements, right? So when we talk about diet and nutrition, which I'm sure kind of feeds into the cardiovascular health, feeds into sleep, etc. Are there any specific strategies for Alzheimer's patients or people who may be prone to Alzheimer's, supplement strategies that they could adopt that, you swear by, that you really think are effective?
The reason why I didn't give supplements in the top 4 is I feel like people rely too much on it because it's easy. Like all those 4s are very hard to really optimize, but then you buy a pill, you pop it, and then everything is solved. It's easy. Everyone wants that. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that. So if those 4 that I mentioned are not fixed, taking supplements won't solve anything.
Yeah.
Right. So the supplements is more like the cherry on the cake. The few things that are very important is omega-3 in your brain, because that's definitely what repairs the neurons and so on. Specifically, the type of omega-3 that can go inside the brain, because in our body, you have the blood-brain barrier, which basically blocks a lot of molecules to pass, and also like pathogens, like viruses and so on. So you want to have a very strong blood-brain barrier, but it means that whatever you have in your blood might not reach the brain where it's needed. So you have different type of omega-3s. You have the type coming from the fish, that is the more classic one, like if you eat salmon and so on. You have one coming from krill oil. Krill is a type of shrimp, a tiny shrimp, that has a higher possibility of bypassing the blood-brain barrier. And then you have one that is under clinical trial now that is called LPC-bound DHA, which is a type of omega-3 that uses another pathway to reach the brain. And apparently, it has a much higher chance of increasing the level of omega-3 in your brain. That is very important.
So it is able to go through that blood-brain barrier a lot more effectively.
But the main issue is you can't test it. You don't know. Because you can test the blood level, but that's a proxy in what's happening in your brain. So usually you would know that a certain percentage of your whatever is in your blood in terms of omega-3 will be in your brain. So if you have a high enough level in your blood, then you assume that is in your brain.
Sure.
But if you carry APOE4, your APOE transporter is really bad at transporting it. So it might not follow that percentage.
Right.
And you will never know.
So then
that's a leap of faith. And I hate those.
Yeah.
And I have solution within the Phoenix that we're building to be able to test that in a more functional way. But there is no one hard metric where you can measure the omega-3 in the brain. I mean, technically you can. You do an intrathecal punction and then you do it, but that's extremely painful.
So that's a puncture in your head?
Yeah, in your
neck?
cerebral vascular fluid. CSF, yeah.
Okay, that sounds scary. I don't think anybody wants that.
You don't want to do that.
Yes.
So you wouldn't know. So that's kind of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
So the way to test it is more in a holistic view, in a more functional view, because you have those very hard metrics, which are, like blood tests, biomarkers, but you can also see how you function in real life, how you feel through qualitative questionnaires and so on. And you have scans, PET scans, MRIs, and so on, that gives you a view on the brain. So I really believe in having this 360 view rather than focusing on 1 or 2 biometrics. Because what I see happening in the longevity space is a lot of people are focusing in optimizing specific biomarkers, but then you are never sure enough that these are 100% proxy and upstream enough. And if they're not, you have been focusing your entire life on a biomarker and it's not solving the problem, you don't know, and then you still have an issue.
Right, you still have the issue happening. Yeah, it's definitely a buzzword, longevity, but you're right, taking a 360-degree approach to it, using as many diagnostic tools as possible to be able to get, it may not always be all the information, but as much information as you can from different angles is probably the most holistic way to go with it. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's something really interesting that just sort of sprung in my head when you said there's a number 4 pillar called stress, and we haven't talked about it. So, we don't necessarily need to get technical about it, but what I'd love to know is, how do you manage it? Because you know that it exists. You are trying your level best to do as many diagnostic tools as possible to test yourself, to find all of these strategies to prevent it from happening. All of that in itself is stressful. What should others do to be able to, if they're in the same boat as you?
I don't think I have a very good answer there. I'm still on a journey myself to know what protocol and everything I should follow.
Sure, fair enough.
But definitely the fact that if you start implementing all these interventions, it takes a big place in your life. I realize that now I'm on a very strict keto diet. It means when I go out, I have to be very careful about that. Sports, I'm focusing on things that is good for the brain. Then supplements, I'm popping so many pills at the same time. Everything that I do is linked to Alzheimer's, and then that definitely has a negative impact.
Right.
And it's kind of almost taking a much big part of my life, I'd say. So there's a balance to strike. I haven't it yet. I don't think I have a good answer. So I've been seeing a therapist that is very good, but it's very difficult to know how to not tie your own even identity.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable on that. I think it is the honest truth. I think I was in a similar position too, right? You become obsessed with like, I am a cancer survivor, or I've had cancer, and so everything I do should be to prevent cancer. And it's taken me a while to not let that be my identity and be everything that I do and seep into every decision that I make. But it's also, like you said, it is one of those more solvable diseases that has happened. I've gotten over the hump. I've moved on. So it's easier. Whereas for you, it's like that bridge that, the train is moving towards. So harder to forget that. So I appreciate you, being vulnerable and saying you're still finding that balance. But I think in every way that you try to beat it, you're empowering yourself. And, hopefully that gives you some level of comfort. It might exist, but like you said, your genes are not your destiny, right?
Definitely. And I think there's some power in, it sounds a bit woo-woo, but like in believing in it. Like placebo effect is a real thing.
It's not woo-woo. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. It's been like proven
Yes.
and everything. And I know that sometimes it comes with a negative connotation, but in the end, it's great, right? You have something. Let's say you even take a sugar pill. If it works on you, like reducing your blood pressure or whatever, those tests have been done on that, then it works. And it's fine. Then it's great. I'll take it.
Exactly.
So feeling that you have agency over it and acting towards it, it has some additional positive impact on top. So I believe and I hope that it counterbalances the additional stress it creates.
Yes, absolutely. There is biology to believe. And while we won't go into the details of it today, but you're definitely on the right track with that. I guess we should really talk about what you do with Phoenix community now, like the most exciting thing. Tell us a bit about how this community came about and what do you do for the members of this community?
So when I discovered my status, and it wasn't too long ago, it was 6 months, 7 months ago, I felt like there was a lot of gaps in what was available online. There are wonderful non-profit associations that are out there that gives a lot of information, but you are overwhelmed very fast.
Yes.
And the second problem is not personalized. And as we mentioned, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. So initially, I was coming in as in my main problem is which intervention should I do and should I add in my protocols? The second layer is I have a club for running. I have a club for entrepreneurship. I have one for triathlon. I don't have one for APOE4. And that's the biggest challenge I have in my life. So I felt like something that is very high touch, more than Facebook groups or even forums, makes sense to have people really on the same journey that understand the risk, because with outside people, it's very difficult to explain that. They're like, oh, you'll be in 75 years or more. Or when you are 75, it doesn't really matter. Like you will die of something anyway, etc. So having people in the same journey and that are also very motivated, I think surrounding yourself around that creates a lot of value by itself. The main layer, though, and the one I'm the most excited about, is building this entire model to ultimately be able to define which intervention should go in based on your genetics, your environment, and your preference. So the way I see it, and for the people who are watching, you have basically a 2x2 matrix that I like to put it on. I mean, that's the consultant side.
Ex-consultant side coming out.
So you have and it's exactly like in consulting, you have the impact, and then you have the ease of implementation, like any initiatives in corporate and so on.
Sure.
And that is for intervention is the same thing, right? Because it doesn't matter that you have the perfect intervention. If it's very hard for you to implement, you won't do it.
Yeah.
And if you're spending, let's say, 10 hours every day doing things that you don't like just to prolong your life by one day, Doesn't make sense either. So this balance is very important. Impact by effort needed.
Okay.
To be able to know the effort, it's relatively easy. It's instinctive, right? Some people are okay to forego like red meat and to run 30 kilometers per week. It's fine. For some other people, it's harder. So that dimension is very easy. The dimension where it's hard to quantify is the impact dimension.
Right.
And the only real way where you can actually quantify it is to run experiments on yourself.
Right.
Experiments meaning you isolate each intervention. You don't take like 12 supplements at one go. You just focus, let's say, on omega-3. And then after a specific amount of time, let's say 2 or 3 months, you test it. You test before, you test after, you see if it changes. And then if it works, then you put it in your stack of interventions.
Sure.
And if it doesn't, then you move on to the next one.
Right.
And that's where I was before founding the Phoenix. The issue of that is if you take 3 months to test each intervention, and you have 30 or plus intervention, it will take you decades to go through everything. And by then, maybe you go through like menopause, changes in your life. So it's like a never-ending like a path, and that is very stressful.
And frustrating, yeah.
Yeah. So the way I found to be able to shortcut this entire process is to look at community data, to be able to crowdsource this entire experimentation by basically gathering these N=1 experiments across everyone in the community and understanding their genetics, environment, and everything, which ultimately would give us information based on people who are similar to us. Because the key point here is to look at what works for people who are similar to us, because then it has a much higher chance to work for us, and vice versa. What doesn't work for them has a much lower chance to work for us. So it's basically putting everything on several dimensions, grouping people in a cluster, and within a cluster, trying to run like different experimentations to be able to shortcut that time. So that's the overall goal of the Phoenix.
Amazing. So what I love is you've got experimentation at the core of it, right? When there's so many variables that are unknown, if you're able to isolate and be guided through what you isolate, what is the protocol that you do then to be able to test the before and after, I think that's wonderful. And then you've got a community that's supporting you through it as well and understands the mindset you're in. You're in the same journey, the same mindset, as you said. Now, would that mean that if I were to join Phoenix as a member, I have to be willing to do this experimentation? Can I be a more passive member where I'm just, absorbing the knowledge that is coming through this and understanding what may work, may not work, but not necessarily participating in these experiments?
I think there are several types of archetype of members. You have the more passionate, the people who are willing to act, and these usually will be early adopters. So they will join, they'll run their test and so on.
Yeah.
Then you have the people who have known their status for 10 plus years. They already have their protocol in place. They don't want to change much, but we get a lot of information from these guys because then we can do the longitudinal study and look at what they've done and what's their status when they get older. Then you have the third type of people who are more the late adopters, who would come in and want to do just a few things. I know experiment sounds like a big word, but it could be as simple as taking one supplement, as simple as doing 10,000 steps every day, and so on. So it's really like dependent on the person themselves. Right. They don't need to go like all in and do it. Ultimately, the goal, once we have enough data points, is for a member to come in, upload their gene, the whole genome sequencing, upload their blood biomarkers and a few other questions in the questionnaire, and then having leveraging AI, a few interventions that are recommended for them to do with a high accuracy score, and then they decide to do these prioritized. So that's basically the solution I would have loved to have when I detected my APOE4 status.
And of course, all of this data that you are taking from the members is extremely secure, not shared with anyone.
Yeah, so it's very important for me to stay 100% independent and unbiased, which means that the way we cover the cost of the community is through a membership and never taking from sponsorships from companies that might offer interventions. So that include all the supplements company or the big pharma and so on, even the gene testing companies who are never taking any affiliate fee or whatever, because then it creates a lot of biases in what we recommend. And I wanted to avoid that.
I think that's really important for people who are listening to know.
Yeah.
Where is the science really heading next? What's coming up for Alzheimer's? Are there any breakthroughs you're hoping that will come through and you're seeing that are maybe in clinical phase already? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you have a lot of different angle in which the researchers are going through. They have been looking at amyloid for a long, long time, and now it's been proven that the causation is not exactly there. They've moved on to tau protein right now.
Tau protein.
Tau protein, TAU.
TAU.
And this is something that the pharma are looking at because you can build basically a molecule that would target it. Those are the pharma interventions. Hopefully it works. It's very difficult now to see if it's working or not because it's at phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials. The different other things, though, you have things that are more upstream. Let's say you have APOE4. You want to have APOE3 or APOE2 instead. So you have gene editing that comes in, CRISPR.
Gene editing.
Gene editing, called CRISPR, which is basically managing to edit your entire body's gene or target it, and that would solve it upstream. If you manage to get APOE3 or APOE2 instead of APOE4, then it basically solves your problem.
Sure.
You have the issue of reaching the brain, like blood-brain barrier.
Yes.
Scientists are looking at nanoparticles, which can directly go there. So that solves the transport there. So those are other solutions. So actually you have tons of different ways. And I think there are lots of reasons to stay hopeful. The main thing is keep your brain as disease-free as possible while we wait for all these innovations to come. So it's really about slowing down the disease, if not preventing.
I think that's such a wonderful note to end on because it at least gives me hope. I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the episode, but I know I shared it with you personally that my grandfather had Alzheimer's from my dad's side. And so I'm sure I carry some form of that gene, but cognitive decline in general is something that, I'm sure is top of mind for a lot of people nowadays. Wasn't the case always, but I think now people are thinking about it a lot more. So it's great to see that science is working really, really hard and that there might be a breakthrough, that's coming through soon. But at the same time, I do want to say the great work that you're doing with Phoenix and especially on lifestyle, the changes that you could be making on lifestyle and making sure they're personal to you is something we can already do. That is knowledge that already exists and can give a lot of power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, for everything that you do, for creating this community. I hope anyone that's listening or watching will join if they're even mildly curious and want to even passively absorb the knowledge that you have to share, because I think it's really exciting. I know I enjoy reading all the knowledge that you share. And I hope people have learned that, there is testing possible. For a lot of people, they may not even know that there is testing possible. What are the different type of genes that show up in this form of testing? And then what is the action that could be taken? Because there is action that can be taken.
Definitely.
Thank you, Kevin. Wonderful to have you here and a great discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Shift, where we uncover the science and stories that help us explore the incredible power of the human brain and mind. I hope this episode sparks something new for you, a fresh idea, a shift in perspective perhaps, or even a small step towards a healthier mind. If it did, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and even share it with someone who might need this conversation too. Your support helps us bring more powerful insights to curious minds like yours around the world. Next up, we've got more experts, bold ideas, and surprising discoveries coming along your way. So stay tuned. And until then, remember, big shifts start small. Stay curious and keep shifting.